gummy bear.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Game Mess Mornings with me, Jeff Grubb, your host from giantbomb.com. Thank you for tuning in. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how the biggest release of the year may be hiding inside of another game. It's going to be a good one because we have Kahlief Adams on the show. Ka, how are you doing?
Fam, so good to see you. So good to be rocking with you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm doing well. I'm doing okay. Trying to figure
likewise.
it out.
Good to see you.
Losing hair by the day.
Me too.
Trying to figure it all out, but good.
Yeah, well, it's been a minute, since I've talked to you. So yeah, it's good to have you on the show. How are things going in the Spawn on Me universe?
Spawn on Me's great. We're in year 11 of the show, which is nuts.
That's crazy.
Trying to figure out, what the next step is for what we want to do. Trying to get some folks to help us build Spawnies again. Because that's super fun and just
that's cool.
getting ready for Summer Games Fest too. I think that's the big thing on the horizon right now is just getting the ducks in order for coverage on that show. But yeah, things decent, not bad.
Yeah. I just always see you hustling out there, always trying to make stuff happen. I always respect that. So Spawnies was a very cool thing. I'm glad you're going to try to do that again. At this point, Summer Game Fest, is that a kind of thing where you'll get some things lined up for something like the Spawnies and Spawn on Me, but also maybe cover some games in some way? What do you hope to get out of a show like that?
I mean, Spawnies is really interesting because it is one of those things where the show happens basically in the next year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting things in order for what I try to do. Summer Games Fest is multiple layers, especially now because I'm unemployed. So I'm I'm hustling for work. I'm trying to network for the show. I'm pitching, developers to be a part of the show now to say hey, our show is a really good space to, showcase your game and, get a release date or, talk to a developer and bring those things on alongside kind of talking to sponsors and trying to get them on board. So, Summer Games Fest is a really good networking opportunity for me, especially because I get to see people who I haven't seen in a while and then also get a chance to talk to them about what games are they making and also cover games during the show too. So it's usually a pretty busy couple of days for me, but it usually winds up bearing a ton of good fruit for the rest of the year.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been paying a little bit more attention, talking to some people from platforms like Twitch and stuff like that, and they mentioned a lot of people who stream a lot have decided it's just not even worth it to go to Summer Game Fest because they make more money staying at home and covering it. It's yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense. For me, I think for you and I, it makes a lot of sense because connecting with people, there's a lot of value in that for us, and it's been important for me for a variety of ways. But mostly the evidence of that is on the screen at GB at night. But even beyond that, it's good to get in front of people for a variety of reasons. But for this next crop of people who cover games, I think they're just thinking, we want the content, and it's easier to get the content on my computer at home. And I guess that makes a lot of sense, like I said. So yeah, I wonder what the future of something like Summer Game Fest looks like. Is it even more of an industry event than it already is?
Well, I think it's interesting because I was talking to somebody the other day and, we've been in the game for a minute now. So we actually understand what E3 was, we had been to multiple versions of it. We had been in spaces where you have to be able to connect with people and really get in front of them. And it just changes the way that the way you network happens. It just changes the way you think about all the kind of pieces. And I don't think that the next generation, this kind of generation that's coming up now, has an avenue for that in the same way. And it doesn't really matter because they have their own legitimate platforms that they're using through their streaming channels and the ways that they're doing stuff. They have way more reach in some aspects, but also don't have that personal connection that usually gets us the spaces that we need to get in for the things that we need. So it's an interesting balance for them. You and I get a chance to straddle that line in the ways that we do our work. So it's nice to be able to kind of have both tools in your bag for being able to do that stuff. So we'll see what they get the chance to do and how that helps them in their careers for this too.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll be keeping my eye on it for sure. All right, let's explain ourselves. Welcome to Giant Bomb. Giantbomb.com/join is where you need to go if you want to help support what we do here. We are newly independent. We're 5 people right now trying to make it happen. Really appreciate all the support so far. If you do go to giantbomb.com/join and sign up for a membership, you'll get all our shows ad-free and plus some extra goodies that we throw on top as well. We'll have more information about all of that here pretty soon. Right now, though, if you are supporting us, you are going to directly make something like GB at Night happen at Summer Game Fest. So As I said, thank you so much. As far as this show goes, most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later on YouTube or live. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with a report says that 2K is preparing to announce not a new BioShock, but an old BioShock, and some sort of remaster of the very first game. This comes from Caracas at MP First. And again, this is a rumor, but let's talk it out here, Ka. According to information we've obtained, 2K is preparing an announcement related to the BioShock franchise. While we don't know exactly when it will happen, some of the information suggests it will occur fairly soon, most likely before the end of summer. At this point, we don't know what the announcement will be about. It could be the reveal of initial details about one of the projects announced several years ago, such as BioShock 4 or the upcoming Netflix movie. Some of the information we've come across also seems to suggest another possibility, a remake or a proper remaster of the original BioShock. Yeah, they kind of go on to explain a little bit more there, but really what's important is this is a possibility according to what they've received here. And I don't know, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, that feels right to me, Con. I'll say why. They are working on a new BioShock, right? We know that is happening. It kind of feels like it's time to reintroduce a lot of gamers to the idea of what BioShock even is. Sure, there's a lot of us who played the game when it first came out, and it's had re-releases since then. But there's a whole generation, I think, of people who have come into video games who missed that BioShock window. And maybe a re-release is a good way to be like, to set the table for a new BioShock game. So that's why it makes sense to me. How about you? How are you feeling this?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I think we're at that point of the BioShock IP that it everything kind of has its moment where you get the first layers of it, and then you get the remakes, and then you get the remixes for stuff like that now. And it feels like, yeah, it would make a ton of sense. I think what I would hope to see is that when people are thinking about remasters like this, they add some extra layers to things that give you a deeper cut. Because it feels like the straight one-to-one isn't as exciting for, I think, a lot of people. But I think if you were to bring in some of those lost, the lost levels that didn't get pulled in, or something else that,
or even like edit it a little bit to like make it even more like right into the guts of what makes BioShock.
Yeah, it's the reason why I really love what they did with Dead Space, the most recent Dead Space remake, because they changed literally a major component of the way the game worked by adding new tech to it, and doing some new things there. So it felt very, very much like akin to what you originally played, but it also had this new layer to it that absolutely changed the way you played it. And it added some extra layers of things with sound and the ways they would spawn monsters and things like that. I want something like that for remakes and remasters going forward. Like, I think the straight rip isn't as cool as what you could do with the extra time that you have, and the extra resources and the extra tech that you have to build that stuff out. But I do think it's time to have some form or version of the BioShock universe come back in a way before the new game drops. So that would be cool.
Yeah, I'm like, it just makes, like I said, makes sense because it also feels like it's time in a lot of other ways. Even if a new BioShock wasn't coming out, it's just like, yeah, I guess you could get away with actually straight up remaking BioShock. Now, we don't know if it's going to be a remake. Maybe it is just a really good remaster. That would be fine as well. But they've done, things along those lines before. So I do think there's a potential here for this to be like one of those Dead Space style remakes. And I think maybe the only scary thing there might be that Dead Space remake, EA wasn't thrilled with it. I think they were happy with it, but maybe not just over the top thrilled with it. So it's like, okay, does something like that work? I still think for something like BioShock, it could. Although I will be curious to see the response. Like, is this something that a new generation or a new audience can lock onto in a way? I don't know. Maybe it was a time and place thing.
I really do. This is one of those moments where I want the industry to do a little bit more digging on the analytics side of it, because I am the person who's like, oh, well, the younger generation is going to care about that stuff. And then you see something like Indiana Jones pop up and do really well, point. Right? Like, I am the person who's like, well, does that IP really resonate with an audience who didn't grow up with those things? And I keep getting told that I'm wrong by the
Uh-huh.
sales numbers for those things, but I don't know if that's like all of us who remembered those things and buying in, or if a new generation is actually caring about those things and pulling in. I would love to see some data that kind of gives us a better insight on what that looks like, because then that kind of moves the needle for a lot of different people. Because then if it says yes, then you start pulling a bunch of stuff forward, and you're like, oh, okay, we have an audience here who might care and might do something with it. So yeah, I'd love to see some more data on that.
Yeah, it's. I think there's a possibility here where it actually is difficult to even figure out before it happens.
Yeah,
Using data if it can work.
yeah.
Or maybe they'll have to do it several times. But even then, at that point, it's like every time one of these comes out, it changes the calculus, right, for the next one.
Hmm.
Because our people are like, well, I'm sick of all these remakes at a certain point. That does happen.
Right.
Every single one of these changes all the other variables. So it's probably really difficult to predict. So it's always going to be case by case. BioShock feels like one that is, if we're going to get a lot of these remakes, BioShock clearly should be one of them. Like that makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense.
yeah. Are you remaked out at this point? Are you
I'm
still
I'm not.
vibing?
I don't think I would be. I'll just not play it if I'm bothered by it. Like and I'm not. I haven't been bothered by it yet so far.
Yeah,
Like Oblivion. I thought that looked really awesome. I've played a little bit of it. And I
yeah,
keep thinking like I would really like to play more of it. So that one is just appealing to me, just straight up appealing. There's
yeah.
nothing about it that's pushing me away. How about you?
I don't know. I'm in that weird in between space. I'm team new for a lot of things. I'm like, give me new stuff. Give me new stuff.
Of course, yeah.
And these are new things. The Oblivion one is an actual like really good example of how you do a remake, right? Like you are changing a ton of stuff in terms of the visual fidelity in that space. And I think, I'm also looking for a balance of old, but also I'm looking forward to say like, what's the new thing that has on the horizon that's really pushing the medium forward. So I don't know. I'm in a weird in between space. I keep saying that I don't want more, and then somebody drops something dope, and I'm like, damn it,
Yep.
that's actually pretty good. Like, okay, I'll play that too because that feels fun. So yeah, it's a weird in between space for me.
Yeah, it just feels like they have to put a lot of work into whatever project they're doing to try to make their game stand out. And for a new game, it's like you got to do that for every aspect of it. But for a remake,
Mm,
it's like we know some of the stuff works, so let's just put a ton of effort into some of these other things to make it really have a chance of popping out, even though it already has that advantage of its name brand. So it's like I get the appeal for a lot of these companies to want to go back to remakes, and then
yeah.
for us, I get the appeal where it's like, hey, this is a known quantity in a lot of ways, and that makes it worth our time and our money, maybe a little bit more, at least in our
Mm,
brains.
yeah, for sure.
Warhammer 40K Space Marine 2 gets Siege mode next month. Just interesting that they're continuing to support this game. It seems like it did very well for them. This story just comes from Alex Hopley at Game Reactor, but let's go ahead and pair it up with the next story right away.
Hmm.
Space Marine Master Crafted Edition has been revealed. So they are also apparently, yeah, they're remastering the original Space Marine, and they're calling it the Master Crafted Edition. It will have higher fidelity and improved textures, 4K resolution, improved character models, modernized control scheme and interface overhaul, and remastered audio. This is kind of like them playing out one of the scenarios that we're talking about in the last story, right? Where it
Hmm.
is that there was a new game that gave them reasons now to go back to this older game and remaster that again. Clearly, that is with the plan of long-term support for Space Marine 2, which I bet they expect to sell very well for a long time as it churns through sales and stuff like that. And then also to set the table probably for a Space Marine 3 because the second one did so well sales-wise. This is an example of like things working, right? It's properly budgeted, properly managed, at least as far as we can tell. I don't have full insight to it. There were probably nightmares making this game. I don't know.
Sure, right.
But as far as we could tell, seems from the outside well managed, well budgeted, and now they have the opportunity to sort of make some other maneuvers to maximize the return on this game. And in the meantime, we're getting cool stuff with Space Marine. How do you feel about all this?
I mean, this is great. I feel like Warhammer is one of those games that constantly stays in the rotation, either for play or for sale. Like it feels like one of those. I'm not going to ever say that the game is safe because all games are hard to come out. But I think in terms of audience base, fandom, and all that stuff, you already have a huge amount of folks who are bought into that world through the books, through all the pieces of it. And then when you drop a game, it feels like they have a pretty dedicated, player base that they can say, we know about this amount of people are going to buy this thing. So it's good for them. This gives them even more space to kind of build on what they have. And I think the last game was great. I'm actually surprised that the siege mode wasn't in it earlier,
Right.
because it feels like it's perfect for that. But this is good. This is one of those long tail moments, right, where they get a chance to say, okay, we had this on our roadmap, we didn't tell you about it necessarily, or maybe they did, but it just fits. All the things kind of just fit in the way that the Space Marine and the Warhammer universe kind of touch. So it makes a ton of sense.
This is a game from Saber. They also just put out Roadcraft. They have that Jurassic Park game. They
Mhm.
are, reportedly and basically, they confirmed in many ways to me, in a variety of ways, and to other
Mhm.
people, that they are still making that Knights of the Old Republic remake.
Mhm.
That's a busy studio. Um, I, do you worry that becomes too much of a content mill? Like they are treating it too much like a business? Because I don't know. For me, I'm like I like a lot of these games, so I'm like to me this feels like a model of how you do things. But I bet not everyone feels that way, and I bet I'm also overlooking some things that people would point out as criticisms. How do you feel about a studio like Saber that seems to be putting out a lot of like pretty good games?
I mean, hell, I love their football game that they put out. That football game was pretty dope too. That they put
Which one
out.
was it?
Saber. Oh gosh, I forgot. It had Kaepernick was in it, if I remember right.
Oh, right. They
It
they they
was
worked with Kaepernick on that game. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So like, I like Saber a lot. Like they put out really
Wild
good
Card
stuff.
Football, is that it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah.
super fun. It's like a super chill, just like hang out on the couch kind of play thing. But I haven't heard any really weird things about out of Saber at all. Like it seems like everyone is doing fairly well in terms of development. I haven't heard any big rumblings like, oh, we're in development hell. I haven't heard a lot of devs be really upset, if they know, publicly at least. And it feels like they continue to put out really good, smartly done, well priced titles that feel like they are not trying to gouge you. They're like giving you an
Yeah.
experience and then dipping and doing the next thing, and that's kind of great. It's like I feel like there's a layer of folks who are in the industry who are kind of doing that, and we don't really get
Right.
them
A thin
enough.
layer, but
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a very thin layer, but there are folks in the space who are like getting those jobs done, and we don't necessarily give them as much credit in that way. I feel like, it may be a heads down kind of working through it, but um, I haven't heard anything really that's like Saber has put out a game where people are like panned it universally, right? I haven't heard
Right.
that in a real way. So if they're trucking and doing it and making it happen, like give them props for it.
Yeah, they also have that truck game that they announced.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yep.
they're super busy, and they're also, but it's all projects that I at least have some curiosity about. And then like even
Hmm.
like when they put out something that I mostly ignored, there was that Daisy, or not, World War Z, excuse me,
Yeah, yeah,
game a
yeah.
few years ago. And it's like, well, that wasn't super my thing. I noticed some of its tech, whatever. Well, yeah, the fine. I wasn't paying attention to that, but they took the tech from that game, and that's what they used to power the Space Marine games,
Hmm.
like with all of the aliens or whatever, like piling all over one
Hmm.
another. They did that with the zombies in World War Z. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, they're also like reusing their own technology in multiple different ways. This is also a studio that has done some of the impossible ports. They did the Witcher port to the Switch.
Oh
So it's like
yeah.
they have this technical prowess as well. I'll
Hmm.
say the one thing that I've just heard vaguely is that some people that work there think it's a bit soulless, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I could see that if you have like an artist's heart. I
Yeah.
could see you like going to a place like Saber and it not working for you. So I was like completely sympathetic to that. But
Yeah.
for me, you nailed it with like that thin layer of people kind of making games that like where they can go from one project to the next. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of like microtransactions or live service. There's some DLC, there are some expansions, there's the setup for a sequel. It feels like midway to me. It feels like one of those, like
Yeah.
Acclaim, or something, but better than Acclaim. It feels like one of these middle of the road publishers that we didn't appreciate until they were gone, where it's like, man, the industry was better off with them. And sure, maybe it was not this soulful place to make games, but the way its machinery worked seemed more interesting than a lot of other places. I don't know. Does that sound right to you?
No, it makes a ton of sense. I think I mean, one of the things that I remember before I actually got into the industry and was just playing games was, whenever you would see you boot up a game and you'd see the list of middleware companies that were doing things in that space and building things. Those are the folks who are like the pillars of video game industries, right? Those are the folks who are porting things.
Yep.
Those are the folks who are working on middleware. Digital Extremes, I think, is one of the companies that always has been in that space, who is doing really interesting and smart work. Iron Galaxy continues to do really, really dope stuff in those spaces. Like there are a ton of different, those companies that are like really churning stuff out, but doing really good work outside of the normal, we're a big AAA or AA company, a studio that are really supporting what we play every day. And you got to give those folks some love and some visibility. Cause I also think it's a really good space to cut your teeth as a developer. If you're working at one of these kinds of studios where it is a little bit potentially soulless and you don't necessarily get to have your name on the biggest thing on the planet, but you are learning all the tricks of the trade to keep you solvent as a developer in the space. So yeah, shout out to them for churning and making things out. Not churning, but like keeping
Yeah.
keeping things moving in the ways that they need to be successful.
Yeah, it's I someone in chat, it's like, hey, Death Metal Dan's like, yeah, it is soulless. So he's worked on licensed game for a long time, and again, sympathetic to that. I would probably feel the same way, but externally, even when it's licensed games, it still feels like you are building other people's souls up a little bit. Mike Micah of Digital Eclipse has been tweeting and posting
Yes.
on Blue Sky about some of the work they did at a Digital Eclipse on Game Boy Advance and some of these other handhelds where they were making a lot of licensed movie games. And they, now it was handheld versions of these or of these movie licensed games. And so they were getting away with a lot, which probably is not the case for a lot of licensed games these days because there's so much money involved. But for example, like the was it the Charlotte's Web game or Babe Pig in the City? I think
Yes.
it was Charlotte's Web, and they just made it like Prince of Persia to the point where they called it internally Pig of Persia. And so it's like this really interesting 2D platformer on the Game Boy Advance that just happens to have a Charlotte's Web license to it. And it's like there are kids who played that and didn't know why they liked it so much because they probably had played a lot of other movie licensed games and hated them. But like this one, it's like, I think this is actually a fun game. They didn't really understand it. And it's because there was someone behind there trying to get away with what they could get away with while working within that IP. And it's like you could still try to sneak some stuff into these big games. Although I say that as a naive person on the outside, and I bet it's hard.
Well, look, I'll say this, and this may sound controversial, but look, I'd rather be working soulless and be employed than be unemployed and creative. Like,
Yeah.
for real. Like, in a real way, I think a lot of people forget that in the grand scheme because it is very much like it is a dream job for a lot of us to be able to, like, I want to work in games. I want to do this stuff. And with a space that is so volatile right now, it is not bad to be at a space that is kind of under the radar, putting out stuff, continuously getting work and that kind of stuff, as opposed to necessarily being on the big, premier project and that having its feet cut from underneath it. So like, there's a value to that space in a real way for developers in multiple layers, not only from a junior and senior dev space, but also from a, just getting into the space alone and learning about what the projects can be and how you can be a part of it and cutting your teeth in those ways. So yeah, there's value there for sure.
For sure. All right. We're going to get to the rest of the headlines here in a second. Before we move off this story, Jan, Can I get a Space Marine from you, please? Thank you. And now with that, we're going to go to a break. If you don't want breaks, you go to giantbomb.com/join to get all our shows ad-free, but you didn't do that. So let's get to the ad. This episode of Giant Bomb is brought to you by giantbomb.com/join. Join us there, become a member. It helps us make fun stuff. It gets you ad-free content. It also helps us make some extras here and there that we'll give exclusively to you as members. It's giantbomb.com/join for $10 a month or $100 a year where you save $20. You can support us in making all the cool stuff that we make over here at Giant Bomb. Once again, that's giantbomb.com/join. Become a member now. All right, we are back. I believe, Jan, you faded out there at the second, so I think you counted me in there, but let's get on with the show. And also, I promise, if you are watching live, he did say Space Marine in his good way.
I heard it.
Yeah, he's going to edit it in later for the audio listeners. So, so enjoy that. That's going to be a special edition of the show. All right, let's keep going here. Arc Raiders fans think they have found a hidden release date. This is from Jamie Tugayev at DualShockers. Ever since the Arc Raiders Tech Test 2 ended, players around the Rust Belt, which I guess is the map, have been showing signs of post-raid withdrawal. Symptoms are varied, but a Discord community had an outbreak of high-quality investigative behavior. Embark briefly pushed out an update well after the public preview had ended. Although it was accessible for less than 10 minutes, that was enough time for some crafty raiders to dig around and find what might be a release date announcement. The potential Easter egg was hidden inside the game's disabled executable, as described on Reddit by user Kazerts. The base 64 string on the top of the pioneergame.exe file it links to a countdown. Excuse me, said that weird. Basically, the countdown goes up on June 6th. And hey, that's right around Summer Game Fest.
Mhm.
That feels possibly like a time you would shadow drop a game like this, right? That's possible.
It makes a ton of sense. You know, like the fervor around the game is high. Everyone is really excited for it. You know, people are really waiting for that thing to come back. Like I have seen a lot of folks online with the withdrawal messages about,
Yep.
yo, open the gates. It's the open
Let
the
me
gates,
in.
let me in thing. So yeah, it makes a ton of sense for them to drop this thing around Summer Games Fest, and it gives Keighley another good announcement to throw into a show, right? So it definitely makes the timing sound good. It is really interesting also just to see how people are continuing to go through, you know, data mining and going through
Yep.
hashes to go find stuff. I'm like, that also just feels weird. You know, just like how do you keep yourself safe from getting your stuff leaked like that? But
You
it's
just
always
don't.
weird.
I think you have to, at this point, you have to accept it and maybe even lean into it, because you know,
Yeah.
there's a potential like maybe they were aware that their community does this. And maybe that's one of the reasons they did it. Probably not, because it was only up for 10 minutes, right? So, but you know, at the end of the day, it all accomplishes the same thing, right? Hype for the game and hype for whatever's happening around
Yeah.
Summer Game Fest. Now, if nothing's happening around Summer Game Fest, some people will be annoyed, and there's just nothing they can do about that. That stinks. I get that. But
Yeah.
I promise they will still want to play the video game. Arc Raiders looks so cool to me. I still have not played it, but every time I
Yeah.
see more gameplay, it's got this like 1970s sci-fi aesthetic that I just think looks so awesome. And then the gameplay just looks really action-filled surrounding that aesthetic. So I'm ready for it. And then all the positive buzz clearly is one of the reasons I'm getting excited for it.
Yeah.
This is a game that could, you know, shadow drop around the time that the Switch 2 is launching. That wouldn't affect it for sure. It's going to be able to. It seems like one of these games that's going to be able to stand on its own, right?
Yeah, I think whatever Embark wants to do with this thing, they can do at this point. Like they have done the thing that you're supposed to do when you drop a kind of tech test, right? This is the thing that you hope for as a developer, as a marketer in those spaces, to say we have garnered enough good vibes around our thing that we can now do exactly what we want in our marketing plan or with
Right.
the ways that we want to do it. So for them, they're in a really good spot. They could drop it tomorrow and they would freak out everybody on the planet who wants to play that game. And I think that they would be in a really good spot. I think the discussion now has also changed a little bit, at least from what I'm seeing on my feeds, has been the conversation about like pricing on it, right? Does it still continue to be in a free to play space? Does it have a $40 price tag? What is the price tag going to be? Then that conversation changes again, right? If the you know the prevailing understanding is that things like this go free to play and that does well. And then, you know, if they do have a pricing scheme or a pricing model on it, that is for pay. What does that look like? And our player is going to be down for that. So we'll see what they land on that.
Chat pointed out, I think it was Ichiban Kasuga in chat, pointed out
Yeah.
that Embark Studios actually launched the finals as a shadow drop at the Game Awards.
Oh, yeah.
I believe that was at the Game Awards. It was at least at a Keighley's thing. So they've done this before. And I'm saying they've done this before as if they're for sure going to do it. This could also just be an announcement for a release date later or other information, or it could just be a trailer. Who knows? A new tech test. It could be a bunch of things, although I think, you know, that community seems pretty certain that the game is coming out soon. I think so they have other reasons to think that, I believe.
Mhm.
All right, man, talking about communities believing in things. Here's one that might be hooked up on a severe amount of copium. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is super popular again on Steam as fans petition for a third game. This is from Eddie McCoo at GameSpot. 2017 Star Wars Battlefront 2 from developer DICE is popular again, with player numbers jumping on Steam to near record levels. I would credit this. I want to credit it to Andor, but I think it's a combination of Andor and Revenge of the Sith hitting theaters around the same time and really getting both of those audiences, both parts of the Star Wars audience excited at the same time.
Mhm.
This is happening amidst a fan campaign for EA to make another entry in the popular multi-million selling franchise. The game reached around 10,000 concurrent players on Steam in the past 24 hours, which is just shy of its all-time peak concurrent record of 10,500, according to data from SteamDB. Remember, the game launched on Steam way later, so those were
Mhm.
numbers for like years later. Let's see, the game was hovering between 1,500 and 3,000 peak concurrent players until mid-April 2025, when player numbers began surging for the 8-year-old game. In some ways, it feels like it's older than 8 years, and in
Right?
other ways, it's like I can't believe it. I can't believe it's already been 8 years. It's both.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I like this game. I also have cravings to go back to it pretty frequently. It's one I wonder. I wonder if that works on the Steam Deck because I wonder if the anti-cheat will work on there.
Probably.
It probably works on there, so it's
Probably.
like that would be a fun one to have on there. That's me just thinking out loud because I do want to play more of this game.
Yeah.
I do not think anyone should get their hopes up for the possibility of a Battlefront 3. What do you think?
I am probably on the total opposite of the folks who want this game. I mean, it's great. I had a fun time when I played it, and it was great. I am being selfish when I say this, and I want everyone to understand that this is a selfish want because I want all dev resources on Battlefield. Whatever the Battlefield game that's coming out,
That's what they're doing for sure.
everything on that. I don't care about these old games getting new releases. I don't want a new version of this. I want everyone going to Battlefield right now and making that thing good because that's what I need right now. I need a good Battlefield game. But Battlefront 2 was a lot of fun. Like it is one of those games that when you think about the perfect kind of mashup of an IP with player expectations and a good base layer of gameplay, like Battlefront 2 is really cool. I do think it does kind of give the conversation around what's a dead game a good look at, which I think
Yeah.
is great. I think anytime the community kind of surprises you with new info and new want or new kind of connection to things that were older and stuff that people didn't play or played a while ago, it's always nice to be able to see. And I hope that they have some ability to kind of pluck and so like what was the secret sauce here? It wasn't Andor. Was it another connection to an external thing that happened that made people want to come back in? So I hope that people can find out what that connective tissue is and poke at that because I think that's a really important thing moving forward.
Yeah, we have seen EA be a publisher that can be swayed in the past. Now, these
Yeah.
are over long timelines, and maybe their internal sentiment about responding to fan campaigns changes from day to day, let alone year to year. But Skate 4, they are making that. They are making hashtag
Mm.
Skate. That still hasn't come out, and
Yep.
that was in response to a social media campaign. Although I think Skate 3 and some others had some pretty decent player numbers and spikes
Mhm.
similar to this at the time. But do you think that this does change the conversation at all inside of EA? And I'm talking like 1% here, Ka. Like, do you think that they see this spike and it triples its concurrent players? Is that a data point that someone can take to someone else internally to make the argument that maybe we should be considering a Battlefront 3 at some point down the line? Obviously after Battlefield, because you're right, they are all hands on deck for that.
Mm.
Or is this just something that they don't even, it doesn't move the needle at all?
I think if I would have seen some marketing behind it, like it's hard to see what happens when you have a game that's been gone for a while and then people start to play it again. I haven't heard anything about them doing something that would financially benefit in a way that EA cares about to say, let's push it. Like it hasn't been part of a Steam sale yet, and I'm probably sure it will be, right? Like they'll drop it so that they can potentially move the player base even further up. But I think right now it's a little bit of it is the what's my neighbor playing? Are they playing something fun kind of moment, right?
Hmm.
And if they are, that's a good telltale sign for them to say, okay, there may be some juice here. But I think you have to get even bigger numbers than what they're seeing now. And I think you would have to have some layer of financial support to say, oh, it's cool that people are playing it, but are they willing to spend money on it? And I think
Right.
that's the thing that they would have to see for that to go in a different direction. I do think again it gives them good data, right? It does make them understand that there's some space there that they can do some stuff. If they were really smart, they would to kind of poke at that to see where they would go. Drop a character that you had on the back burner that got on the cutting room floor and see if people do anything with it. Like see if people buy it, like drop it for super cheap Drop it
Hmm.
for like $1, and then see if people go and cop it, and see if they buy it, and see if that moves the needle
See if
there.
they actually play it even. Yeah.
See if they actually play, right? Because that's the thing, is like you have to give those folks some ability to say, you know, this is actually doing something financially for us, and if they can, then that makes more sense. But um, who knows? Who knows? Like you're spot on about the skate stuff, right? I think that's one of those conversations that when you saw those discussions come up, everybody knew that they wanted it, but they didn't expect it to happen. So we
Right.
could be in the outlier space and say, oh, we saw it coming, but we didn't believe in
Hmm.
the same ways that they did. So who knows? That would be cool if it did, though.
Yeah, I think that this is a organic bubbling of positive Star Wars sentiment
Mm,
inside of a larger bubble that still is kind of leaden and held down and unexcited or like flat out sick of Star Wars in a lot of ways.
yeah.
And this doesn't like undo that. You know, the difference between this and skate was, you know, skateboarding was still cool. You know, it could be disassociated from skate. So when skate was like, hey, can we come back to the party? When people were
Mm,
like, and then and that was like again organic from people like PewDiePie putting out a Skate 3 video and it just blowing up, and then a bunch of kids trying out Skate 3 for the first time. That feels very different, like overall, in terms of the excitement for the idea of a skate game, as opposed to being like, okay, yeah, sure, these people who like this Star Wars game are coming back to this Star Wars game. Can we justify a massive investment? And at that point, we have to get that mainstream audience. I don't know if the mainstream audience is ready to rush back to Star Wars yet.
look,
It feels unlikely at this point.
look. If there's any game that I want y'all to do that with, internet, listen to me. If there's any game that you can do that with, do it with NBA Live, please. I need a new NBA Live game. I need
Um,
people to
you
go
heard
back
him.
and go play that thing. Go make a new, so they can
Are
make
you,
a new basketball game for
are
EA.
you going to say NBA Street? And I was almost there with you, but
I'm
I'll
so,
take NBA Live.
I'll take. I mean, I'll take Street even more. Like, yes, Street. I'll be out in the street if they make an
Yeah,
NBA
right,
Street
exactly.
for
Let's
real.
march.
Yeah, I'm down for
Uh,
that.
all right. This next one is wild. Let's get through it all together here. Oh wait,
Yeah,
did I read this last part here? Oh yeah, someone who used to work on Star Wars before we move on the Battlefront games was on Reddit. His name's Matt's Helge Holm. He responded to someone saying, "Hey, would you people want to come back and work on a Star Wars Battlefront game again?" And he's like, "Many of us would. I would. I talked to my friends, they would." Basically,
mm,
there's this idea of, and he says here, getting the gang back together.
mm.
Man, boy, that's a big sort of like a bone to throw to that audience. So, you know,
Yeah,
that whole conversation we just had, Kyle, what this feels like is a little flame on that fire. And
yeah,
maybe this does sort of burst up and get EA's attention. It doesn't feel like it has yet, but maybe something like this could fuel that. So let's see how this
mm,
develops.
yeah.
All right. The Dark Pac-Man Metroidvania secretly has what I can only describe as Pac-Man Championship Edition 3 hidden inside of it. This comes from Michael McWhorter at Polygon. Shout out to Polygon. I'm like happy to see
I
Michael
know,
McWhorter still has a
I
job, but I
know,
bet it's got to be tough over there. So
I know.
just shouts out to Mike, who's byline I've been reading for years and years and years. He screams video game news to me. I'm just glad he's still working, but boy,
Mm-hmm.
Polygon just breaks my heart every time I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Bandai Namco's bold new take on Pac-Man, the 2D action platformer known as Shadow Labyrinth, has a secret. Despite being a grim sci-fi Metroid-inspired game that looks nothing like a traditional Pac-Man sequel, there's actual real Pac-Man gameplay in here. A new trailer for Shadow Labyrinth reveals the maze, a portion of the game that's shorthand purpose. That the portion of the game for shorthand purposes looks a hell of a lot like Pac-Man Championship Edition 3. All right, struggle to get through that, but basically saying this portion of the game looks like Pac-Man Championship Edition 3, which people don't know was an Xbox Live arcade series that was this neon spruced up version of Pac-Man that had a lot of leaderboard chasing, and I played it a
Mm-hmm.
ton. Boy,
Me
one of my
too.
favorite Xbox 360 games, Pac-Man Championship Edition DX2 or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
The core gameplay of Shadow Labyrinth has players controlling a mysterious warrior named Swordsman Number 8, who is accompanied by Pac-Man, or something shaped like Pac-Man, named Puck, battling to become the apex predator of an alien planet. But at a certain point in Shadow Labyrinth, you'll play honest to goodness Pac-Man maze levels and draw inspiration from the Championship Edition line of pellet and ghost chomping games. It's hard to see if this like will have the full leaderboard experience, although maybe it will. It seems like this could be one of those things. Once you beat the game, this becomes its own mode from the menu or something like that.
Hmm.
That's what I'm hoping for. That makes me more likely to play this game. Although I do keep hearing interesting things about Shadow Labyrinth. People seem to like it, and I was surprised by that. For me, it's like this is the weirdest thing I could possibly imagine for Pac-Man to go into. So I wasn't even bracing myself for the possibility it could be interesting. So what do you think about all this?
I missed this. I totally missed all of this. I just pulled up the trailer for it, and I'm like,
Right.
oh, this looks kind of dope.
Do you know what this is related to?
No, what
That
is this?
that is it the Amazon show chat? The one from the Love, Death, and Robots guy. Tim Miller, you
Oh,
the Deadpool guy as well, right? And he made that one for Amazon Secret
yes,
Level,
yes,
and
for Secret Level. Yeah,
it had all of these different short films based on a bunch of different video game
yeah.
franchises. I think they had Mega Man and stuff like that in there. Well, one of them was Pac-Man, and it was
Yep.
this. It was like the setup for this. So
Oh, that makes total sense now.
and yeah, but it's
Okay.
even stranger, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
this version of Pac-Man tied into this Amazon show that has a short film for a bunch of weird kind of game tie-ins that don't always make a lot of sense. Not that I'm complaining. I like that part about
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but okay, so then we're gonna take that and turn it into a Metroidvania where you play as this other character who's followed around by this Pac-Man assistant. It's bizarre. And I guess the more I describe it, the more I need to play it for myself.
Me at this point too, because I'm looking at again, I was looking at the trailer and I was like, oh, this looks kind of dope. Like I wouldn't mind playing something like this. And if it has a level like that, which again goes back to a game that I loved, I'm totally
Yeah.
down for this. That looks super cool. I like
Yeah,
that.
I'm hopeful that this kind of is one of those situations where what was the Geometry Wars that was baked
Yeah.
into another game before it kind of broke out on its own. I hope this is like the
Oh,
reintroduction of Pac-Man Championship Edition. We get a taste here, and then they like release a XBLA equivalent right now, where it's a game that's
hmm.
$15 and people could just play it however they
I need
want.
more score muncher games anyway.
Me
I need
too.
more of those in my life because that's my jam. I love
Yep.
those for sure. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
dope.
it was. I think the Astrobot speedrunning levels are fantastic, but I'm like, I
Yeah.
also want the score chasing ones, not just the low, the shortest time. Give me the one where it's like, here's 5 minutes of Pac-Man Championship Edition. How many
Hmm.
points can you possibly get? And yeah, I'll do that for hours and hours and hours.
Ooh, yeah, this is good. I like this. Okay. All right.
Monolith Soft says procedurally generated assets in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 reduced man hours considerably. This is Chris Scullion at VGC. Let's read here from Chris. A trio of Monolith Soft developers have said that using procedural asset generation made it a lot easier to make Xenoblade Chronicles 3's vast world map. In an interview with Japanese publication CG World, map model designer Yoichi Asuzuki, support engineer Matsuhiro Hirose, and programmer Takashi Shibahara discussed the studio's gradual inclusion of procedural generation tools in software like Houdini into its development process. I am mostly bringing this up, Ka, so that we can explain that people should not be frightened by this headline, because
Oh yeah, of course.
this is them talking about procedural generation and not
Yep.
like AI. That's not necessarily what they're saying. What they're talking about here is a tool like Speed Tree
Yep.
or their own personal tools to quickly make a vast terrain based on a model set that is still designed by them. I
Hmm.
think there's this idea that like when we use AI tools, we are turning over some part of the creative process to a machine that doesn't understand our artistic goals intrinsically. And
Hmm.
I think I agree with that. I think that's right. I think that's the correct criticism of AI tools.
Yep.
Procedurally generated tools are different. They are like Rube Goldberg machines designed by an artist to output a specific style and aesthetic and idea that is inherently part of the artistic motive there. So I'm a big fan of a procedural generation in
Yeah.
games. I don't think every game needs it. I know like a lot of people are like, I want my levels to feel authored. I get
Hmm.
that. This is still authorship in a different way, but I get what people are the distinction that they're making. I understand, but I think it's a good thing that developers are finding more ways to make bigger worlds faster because we don't need them spending thousands of person hours working on making these levels, right? Because at this point, that is not going to make your game stand out or more fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, ProcGen has been in the space for a long time now. I think it now, like you said, it is butting up against the idea of what generative AI is and how those things are very different. I want people to think of procedural generation as No Man's Sky planets, right? As opposed to what you see in the kind of AI slop spaces that you see online. Very, very different, necessary for a lot of development teams to be able to do what they do at scale. And it makes a ton of sense for them to use that technology for what they're building. I think the thing that is interesting too is when you get a chance to see a little bit behind the curtain of what is happening when you do a procedurally generated world or a level, or what changes and what kind of transforms. It's actually one of those things that's really good for games like roguelikes, because you're
Yes.
constantly going into spaces and everything is changing and giving you a new experience every time you load in.
The whole genre
Uh,
relies on that. Yes.
it literally, right? So it's like it's one of those things that this is a good time to level up your game knowledge, your game dev knowledge, to be able to understand what things are, as opposed to,
And why
the
you enjoy it,
usuals.
right? Yeah, because like
Yeah, this
it can improve your enjoyment once you kind of have a little bit of an understanding here, which I think most of our audience listening right now,
yeah,
almost certainly does, right? But it's like
totally.
we're just filling in a few pockets here and there.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And everybody who's rocking, they definitely should know what it is and
Yeah,
have been using it for years. You've been using it without even knowing, for the
yeah.
most part.
I mean, like the original Rogue itself, right? That was procedural generation or form of it, right?
Something
Like,
to that,
yeah,
yeah. Hmm.
absolutely. Okay, just a couple more headlines to get through here. Game Boy, Nintendo Switch Online adds Gradius, Interstellar Assault, Kirby Star Stacker, Survival Kids, and The Sword of Hope. This is from Sal Romano Gamatsu. Really just reconfirms that list there.
Hmm.
I know what Gradius is. I remember what Kirby Star Stacker is, although I think I only played it briefly. It's one of those simple block dropping games, puzzle games.
Hmm.
Um, Survival Kids. I'm like, this. Why is that name ringing a bell? Even though I
Mm,
know I didn't play anything like that on the Game Boy. It's because this is an ongoing series that now has a new one that's coming out on Switch 2 at launch. It's like
interesting.
that's crazy. And I guess it's a Lord of the Flies like adventure game where you bunch of kids who are trying to survive, I suppose as the name says. I'm interested in like maybe going back to this Game Boy version so I can be a little bit more prepared for what the Switch 2 version's doing, just to like compare contrast. So I think that's
Yeah.
cool. And then the Sword of Hope, I can't remember what that is. I looked it up last night and I've already forgotten. So let's look it up. The
The Sword of
Sword
Hope.
of Hope,
I bet you it's a
GB.
sword that gives you hope.
Yeah. It's oh yeah, that's right. It's a Kimco game. It's a Kimco RPG. I think oh yeah, this is like surprisingly ambitious for the Game Boy. I think is kind of
Mm,
how people describe it. But
okay.
yeah, cool. How do you feel about Nintendo Switch Online's game selection? They
Eh,
update it somewhat frequently, but I guess that's me just being conditioned. When in all reality, it's like man, we get a couple of games every couple of months.
Yeah, it's basically that. Like
Yeah.
nothing profound to share on that. They continue to churn out stuff and drop things when they have their cadence, and it sounds like people are excited about what they usually get in that package.
Yeah, I think I do get excited about these games still, although I have 50 different ways to play any of these games whenever I want.
Right.
But there's something about the serendipity of a game dropping that I was thinking about playing and now knowing a bunch of other people are playing it. It's like, watching a movie on TNT is different than loading up the DVD of it, right? It's like it's
Yeah.
on TV and it feels like, oh, the universe has selected this for me in this moment. Obviously, that's a stupid thought, but that's how it feels to me. And something similar happens when a game drops on NSO. So,
Mm,
that's part of me being in the Nintendo ecosystem and thinking about that stuff. And it's not going to affect everyone the same way for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Last story here. Elden Ring live action film officially announced. There was that rumor. Turns out the rumor was correct. This comes from Sal Romano Gamatsu again. Bandai Namco and A24 have announced a live action film adaptation of From Software developer video game Elden Ring. It will be written and
Mm,
directed by Alex Garland and produced by Peter Rice alongside Andrew McDonald, Alan, yeah, no, let's say Alan Reich from DNA, and George R. Martin and Vince Garadas.
mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Alex Garland did Annihilation, right? He
Mm-hmm.
also did Civil War most recently.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, I really kind of want to see what this is going to look like. What are you expecting
Oh,
here?
I mean, the funny thing was, as soon as I saw that A24 was connected to it, that immediately was the thing that got me really excited, because
Right.
for me, they put out nothing but bangers. So it's always good to see, them attached to a project, and seeing Alex in that mix too. That gives me some good guidance, that I feel like he's a person who can take a story and really run with it in a good comprehensive way. Like, I think he also finds like good pockets of story to be able to surface that you might not necessarily have seen in a larger scoped story, in a larger scoped kind of narrative. So that's great to be able to see that those two folks are kind of working together in that space, and George being in the mix always makes everybody excited just from jump. So,
Exactly. They could just put that name up there on the marquee, and it'll make a big difference. Yeah.
That's automatic money for them to have people have eyes on it. So yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun if they can get this through and get this through production and make it happen. Like, this will be a really fun thing for fans to be able to go through. I do think this will have another zeitgeist moment when this happens for the folks who are big fans of Elden Ring. Plus, Night Rain coming out fairly soon. Like, lots of good news for Elden Ring fans coming forward. That's dope.
Yeah. A24 is the key for me, because it's like, okay, what I need from an Elden Ring movie, and you know, obviously I want it to be great on all fronts, but what I really need from it is to look shit hot. I just need it to look awesome. I need it to look like just so well shot and well considered, well constructed in every facet of its design and the way that the camera actually shoots the action. A24 sort of prioritizes that, or at least it seems to, based on its output. I think if you make an Elden Ring movie that looks like another A24 joint, Green Knight, like you're most of the way there. You're like 95% of the way there. If Elden Ring is kind of indistinguishable in aesthetic style from the Green Knight, I'm gonna be excited just based on that. And then if they get like some of the vibe of the storytelling right, I don't know how like important it is to like get any of the specifics 100% like down pat, but if they can get the vibe across, again, I think that'll be very important for me. Whether that turns it into a major hit, I don't know what A24's expectations are. This is a deal with Bandai Namco, who has not necessarily licensed out a ton of movies for big Hollywood productions, which is probably why these two entities make some sense together. But I don't know. To me, Elden Ring does feel like it could have been a franchise that demanded attention from like a Universal or a Disney or something like that.
Yeah, it feels like this is a nice kind of like dip toe in the water kind of situation for both Bandai and for A24 to kind of do more game related stuff. Like the game that I played most recently that I feel would be perfect for a movie adaptation would be Clair Obscur 33.
Yeah.
Like, that game would be stupid on a big screen, and seeing how that thing would work. But I think, you know, this will be one of those moments where they don't have to do much, right? Like, you have to get the visuals right, you have to get the scale right, because monsters in Elden Ring are massive. If you get that right, that just feels very cinematic in and of itself. But I feel like the first time you sit down next to a bonfire and you do your rest moment, like that'll be the thing that freaks everybody out in the theaters, and everybody will cheer and be excited for it. So I don't think you have to do a ton for fan service, but you have to get the visuals right, like you talked about. And if you do that, then you're in a good spot.
I think you put Turtle Pope in there and you're good. I think you put the Pope hat on a giant tortoise, and that's like enough fan service for everybody.
Big walking pot.
Okay, you're right. Those two things. That's what we need. You're right. Okay. Before we move on from this, kind of get to the poll question. The most important, thing that I need answered about this is, who does Jack Black play?
Oh, he has to play the pot.
He does actually. You're not wrong. It would be good. It would. That's actually not bad. I'm like, of course we're joking here. I'm like, no. As soon as you said that, that's good. Let's make that happen.
If he doesn't play the pot, then it's wrong. Like, you messed up the movie. He has to play the pot. That's it.
Oh, that's good stuff. All right.
That's so good.
That does it for the headlines. Let's get over to that poll question, which I have sneaked away over here. Yeah, hidden away over here. Let me refresh. All right, this is from yesterday's show. Did you ever use PlayStation Stars? 26% said yes, 29% said no. So it's actually pretty close for people who are aware of what PlayStation Stars was. And then 45% said, what the hell is that? Most people do not know. Well, not most people, but almost half of the respondents had no idea what PlayStation Stars even was. And that this is a savvy audience, right? Right, Kaz? Yeah. So 29% just saying, no, I never used PlayStation Stars. And then the other half saying, I did not know what that is. That's probably why they shut it down. Did you hear this? They shut down PlayStation Stars through the loyalty program. Yeah. Did you ever use it?
Yesterday I did. I did yesterday. It was funny because I was talking crap about it, because I'm a weird person on the planet who's like, I'm tired of trophies and achievements. I'm like, get rid of all of it.
Same.
Because I'm like, look, if you're gonna do something like this, it has to provide direct value. And I talked a bunch of crap online, and I opened it up, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, these 29,000 points that I have that didn't do anything, Oh, I can get $10 off on a on a PSN card. Okay,
That's nice. Yep.
that's nice. Like, all right, those things kind of work. But I think, you know, these are the things that I worry about for the next space. I think not worry about. I'm hoping for if you're going to do these things again, which I think will happen in the next generation of consoles, next generation of hardware, that stuff. You have to figure out what the value is that gives direct things to players in a way that they
Yeah.
care
Yeah.
about. If you can do that, then you're automatically in such a much better space. And the PlayStation Star stuff, I think they went too future forward with the here's the digital tchotchke thing that you can get, as opposed to saying, oh, well, we've implemented and pushed forward to like, no, you can help pay for your next game with this.
Yep.
And if you can do that and incentivize those things, then you're in a much better space. So yeah, I like open that thing. I'm in the app a lot to like pull down things that I've captured, but I'm hardly ever touching anything that had to do with PlayStation Star. So it makes sense for it to go away, and hopefully they can revamp it and redo something else for the future, but also like make trophies feel like they're doing something for you. Make all those things feel like they're important, and give you some value that's just besides, yo, I did this thing in this game. Like that would be cool.
Yeah. I wonder if they, as they were launching it, they're like, wait, do we want to put it forward that this is a great way for you, like this audience, to save money? Because I think they probably were realizing as they were launching PlayStation Stars, probably one of the reasons that that launch was so subdued, is that the kinds of people that this will create more loyalty with are the kinds of people who already have a ton of loyalty to PlayStation, mostly because they've already bought a lot of games on PlayStation, so
Yeah.
they are locked into that platform. And so it's
Yeah.
like, we already have them locked down. Why are we doing all this extra work to lock them down even further? That seems like misplaced resources. I wonder if that's kind of one of the motivations here as well.
Probably. I mean, I think if you look at the conversation around Game Pass, that's their tagline, right? Their tagline is literally just like we're giving you stuff for air quote free, right? You
Yep.
know, you're getting stuff for things like in that space. I think the problem with PlayStation Plus is that they don't push that conversation as much, and therefore it winds up happening that any kind of other reward program that they wind up doing feels a little bit less than even what you're getting on the Microsoft side, and even within their own ecosystem of what they're trying to push forward. So I think the digital layer of, you get a small version that feels like Astrobot the mini game, as opposed to something that feels more important, and more kind of like I need to be doing this, or I need to be paying attention to this and tracking it. So hoping that they go back to drawing board with that stuff and do something really really fun with it.
For sure. All right. Let's see. I got a new poll question. We'll get to that
Yeah.
here in a second. Before we do that, Kahlief Adams, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, what you have going on, and all of that good stuff?
First, I want to say thank you for having me. Second, I want to say I'm so proud of y'all for going independent. It is not
Oh, thank you.
easy. I'm so excited for y'all. Please go support the team. You can go check out my stuff on Spawn on Me podcast with Kahlief Adams. And hi, I'm Kahlief Adams. You can do that on any podcast platform. Check us out on YouTube, especially we're trying to grow that to 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year. We're almost around 6,200 or so. And we're definitely looking for more folks to kind of tap in with the work that we're doing on the podcast, and on Spotify as well, because that's where you get a chance to see most of our video episodes. Also coming very, very soon, a new show with me and Paris Lilly called The Positivity Peddlers. We're still pushing that and getting that ready to go. That'll be on Patreon as well. We'll be linking to that when it goes live. And again, Summer Game Fest is going to be coming up very, very shortly. We'll be doing a ton of coverage there. It'll be me, Cam Hawkins, and some other folks rolling around in LA doing our thing. And please support the work that's happening. Again, the conversation around independent media is very important, and we are a part of that conversation as well. So please come rock with us and share the good news and ride with us in Chicago. So thanks again, and appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ka. Everyone should check out Spawn on Me. It's a good listen. All right. New poll question. Do you want a Star Wars Battlefront 3? Very easy question to say yes to, but let's see. Yes or no, your options. We'll get the results of that poll tomorrow, or excuse me, no, Tuesday, Wednesday, because we are taking Monday off for Memorial
Nice.
Day. And that's really just, we're not going to be doing any content. So still SGF planning over here for sure on that Monday. So yeah, we'll get the results of this next week here on Giant Bomb. Speaking of Giant Bomb, later today, we're going to have our Unprofessional Friday return with, it's not called Mr. Mosquito, it's Mosquito War or something like that. It's Mr. Mosquito meets Evolve. It's a 4v1 asymmetrical multiplayer game where 4 mosquitoes try to annoy one person all 5 of Giant Bomb are going to be on that, so look out for that. I think that's 2 p.m. Eastern time, I believe, right, Jan? I don't know. He can correct me if I'm wrong on that. We might have moved it to
12
3
Pacific.
Okay, so 3 p.m. That's right. We moved it so we could accommodate schedules. All right, that'll be happening here in a little bit, and then we'll be back next week with plenty of stuff as well. There's also some quick looks still going up, things like that. We'll get those done and in your feed very soon. All right, Kahlief Adams, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and talking about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Love you, fam. Go Knicks. We got this. I don't want to cry again tonight. I don't want to cry again. But excited and again, love you and the rest of the Giant Bomb community. Again, y'all are some of the best folks on the planet. You always been treating me kindly, and it's always good to be able to rock with you on any show. We got to get you on Spawn and Me soon to come talk and
yep.
Chop it up
Let's get back on there. That would be great. Love you too, Ka. Thanks as always for coming on the show. Thank you everybody for listening and watching at home. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself and goodbye. You're the best audience in gaming.
Yummy like a gummy bear.